Am I up? I've lost my train of thought.
Hey everybody, welcome to Listography. Jason, Joe, and Krams are here, and this week we are ranking the albums of Blondie. Blondie has 11 studio albums. They've been around quite a while now, since the, mid to late 70s. They were kind of part of that New York CBGB scene, quickly found pop success after just a couple records. Got huge and then broke up in the early 80s. They weren't around that long, and then came back in 1999 with a reunion, and they've been putting out records fairly regularly since then. Fronted by the iconic frontwoman Debbie Harry. No, her name is not Blondie, but let's see, what do you guys got? How well do you know Blondie going into this?
First half, yes. Second half, no. That's as simple as I can put it.
First half, no. Second half, no. I think I've listened to one Blondie album all the way through before this, and that's Parallel Lines. So I knew a good one, so I didn't really know what to expect from the rest of them. I'll withhold comment until we get to those.
I kind of didn't even realize that they had released so much stuff. There was such a half and half, the 6 albums, and then they broke up, and then 5. I remember just kind of hearing, I think when Pollinator came out, but I don't really, in Maria a little bit, but not when it came out. So I was kind of shocked at how many releases there have been, after that big split.
For me, I knew Parallel Lines, Eat to the Beat, Auto American, and when No Exit came out in 99, I really liked the single Maria. So I bought that CD and I had it all through, but I was unaware of most of the other stuff. I remember Pollinator coming out and I listened to that when it came out, but so I guess I knew about 5 of their albums.
Interesting band, because I don't think the big hits and the singles kind of represent their entirety of what they are. You know what I mean? You could really get a sense that they're very disco-y with Rapture and Heart of Glass, but not really as much.
Yeah, I really had no idea what to expect from whole albums. Other than, everyone knows the hits, but they don't have that many that are on the radio or used that often, I don't think. I don't recall really hearing many of these songs ever. So this was sort of a total new experience for me. I was a Blondie virgin going in, so we'll see how I liked Blondie. It's going to get a little rough here at the beginning. I'm not going to lie to you. Some of my least favorite albums I've ever listened to have come from Blondie in the last 20 years or so, give or take. Really, any of these albums could be at the bottom, because I just did not like listening to any of them. At the bottom, though, I put Panic of Girls. It's a bunch of electronic beeps and bloops, really just terrible songwriting. The lyrics are awful. I think the biggest shock to me was how bad the lyrics are, especially towards the end of their kind of classic run. And it continues right into their comeback. This is 2011, so they've been back for a little while now. A lot of lame reggae. The covers on here. There's a cover of a Beirut song, a cover of a Sophia George song. I don't even know who that is, but the song stinks. Just a really bad album in general. Elliot Easton guests on one of these tracks, and not even that can save it. I think I like it roughly the same as something like Mardi Gras or Long Road Out of Eden. I think it's just one of the worst albums I've ever had to listen to. So Blondie, Panic of Girls really, really sucks. My number 11.
Well, I agree that they have a record that is that bad, but I don't think it's Panic of Girls. To me, the worst is Ghosts of Download. Absolutely terrible. Really hate it. I don't know, somewhere along the way, I think probably You know, when they had a hit with the disco on Heart of Glass, and then they had the kind of reggae hit with Tide is High. Somewhere along the line, they got it in their head that they're really good at combining genres, and they're just not. They're horrible at it. They should stop trying. They do one thing really well, and that is hooky pop rock with a slight punk twist to it, kind of power pop with punk edge. That's what they're good at, and they're constantly trying to do other things that just never work. And this record is full of that kind of stuff, this genre bending that they're trying. There's a lot of electronic stuff on here, dance stuff. There's accordion, like like these like dance Zydeco songs, like the big new Zydeco club banger. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. There's this really bad song on here called I Screwed Up, and yes, they did. It's really bad. Mile High sounds like it was produced by will.i.am or something. Just absolute garbage. And then to make it worse, they decided to package this thing with their greatest hits. Like, here, look how good we can be, and then listen to this and hear how bad we are now. Just a horrible decision.
All right, let's turn it over to me. I am the resident Blondie lover. I'm the only one that had one of their albums nominated for Album of the Year. But I can't defend Ghosts of Download either. It is my number 11. Let me speak bluntly that this is, for me, a group that's kind of a case of, is it better to burn out or fade away? And it's literally cut right down the middle for what I like. I think the first crop of their existence is great. I think this one isn't nearly as bad as maybe you guys are about to lay it in, especially Joe with the newer stuff. It's definitely not their best stuff. Like Jason said, they're at their best when they're doing that power pop with punk twist on it. And they are doing other stuff with the newer albums from 99 on. Probably way too much, like Jason said, but I still like kind of the core of it a decent bit, and I'm impressed with just kind of the creativity. Not on this album, though. This is a very bad album, Ghost of Download. It's like they're trying to be hip, trying to like be Lady Gaga mixed with like late 90s Dance Factory album on this. It's not working. Those are the first 3 songs, and then out of nowhere, you get kind of a straight ahead synth rocker with Winter, track 4, which is the only thing that I would say makes it 1.5 stars rather than just 1. Terrible cover of Relax on it. All the other songs Jason mentioned are not very good. Yeah, it's pretty forgettable. It's got kind of the same dynamic as the other ones, like Jason was saying, where they try to just do a bunch of different stuff track to track. But this one, I think they're better at it on other albums. This one doesn't have much going for it except what I mentioned. So yeah, my number 11 right at the bottom is Ghost Download. And yeah, what a bizarre move to tack it on with a double disc of first disc is our greatest hits, and now here's our new stuff, which not good.
It is my number 10, so we'll just keep talking about it. This is an aggressively bad album, just horrendous. The rapping guest part on Sugar on the Side is terrible. The cover of Relax is terrible. The singing is bad. The lyrics are terrible. The keyboards don't sound great. A Rose by Any Name does, it's definitely got that Lady Gaga vibe. And that's really the only track that I kind of was like, okay, I can see where they could be going with this, but there's just so many different styles that come through and none of them really work. There's just way too much reggae influence, way too much electronic boops and bleeps. And I was listening to this on YouTube, so there's all these like commercials that come in every once in a while, and I couldn't tell if it was like a commercial kicking in or like the next track. It's just terrible. Another one of the worst albums I've ever listened to. So not a good start for Blondie. I listened to these in order from first to last, so at least I got the good stuff out of the way. But the last, the comeback years were just a big mistake. Just not good on any level.
All right, my number 10 is The Curse of Blondie. Debbie Harry comes right out of the gate on this one, kind of singing / rapping. It's really, really bad. It really shows that they learned nothing from No Exit. We talked about with Boston. how whatever that last album of theirs was called, Love, Life, Hope, whatever. We talked about how that was just unforgivable coming after corporate America because, you know, you didn't make any changes or correct any of the problems with your previous record. And that's what happens again here with Blondie. No Exits, a pretty big train wreck. And then they do the exact same thing again. The production's really bad. It's got that turn of the millennium, terrible, glitchy production that we always talk about that we hate. You've got like these new metal guitars on tracks that make no sense. The opening track, she's singing Put It In this really weird, annoying way. That's really bizarre. Then you get Good Boys, which is like this weird electro pop song. It's pretty cringy stuff the whole way through this record. Undone is okay. I think that's an all right song. It's kind of like this record's Maria. It's like the one track on the record that kind of sounds like classic Blondie a little bit, but it's still not as good. Not as good as Maria even. And then you got this track called Desire Brings Me Back near the end that has these really, really bizarre, like avant-garde jazz horns that are completely out of tune running through the whole background of the song. It is really, really a head scratcher. I don't know what the line of thinking was with that song.
There are some head scratchers on it, but I also am like intrigued by it. And I think you're missing some of the point of some of the lyrics and kind of behavior and posture. They sometimes are intentionally shallow, like they try to have sometimes like the sleazy, messy kind of vibe to it, which is why I'm not against the Put It In lyrics on Shakedown. I think there's some good guitar work on Good Boys. By the way, this is also my number 10. And I think Undone is a good song. I don't think it's a very good album. I'd say it's a lousy album, but I do find it interesting. I don't think it's terrible. It doesn't ruin Blondie as a whole for me. It's just, you know, by this point, it's not what you want in a Blondie album, but I don't think it's a total lost cause. So number 10 for me is The Curse of Blondie.
All right, my number 9 is The Curse of Blondie. It's another one I don't understand why or how these albums got made. They're just so terrible. Every one of these 3 albums would be my worst album of this year by far. Like, just not, it's the worst music I think I've ever heard. Like, at least from somebody like Boston, you kind of see it coming. But like, I didn't see this coming from Blondie. I was like, good Lord, like what are they doing? What are they trying for here? It's, the lyrics on Hello Joe, just that song is just one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my entire life. The singing sounds terrible. I think Debbie Harry she's an interesting singer, but I don't know if it's produced that way, because I think she sounds much better on a later album, but it's just sort of this time period or whatever was going on, just awful stuff. End to end, I kind of like, has some cool synths and like a nice urgent drive to it. But other than that, it's just like there's a traditional Okinawan folk song on here. Just why would you put that on here? Who are you serving? Like, who's your audience on this? I do not get it. Just another horrible album. And not that I don't hate Blondie as much as I hate these albums. So I don't want to like turn people off of Blondie, but just don't ever listen to this new stuff. Just stay with the classics. You'll be fine. Avoid everything after 1981. Really good.
If you think these Blondie albums are in the same realm as those Boston albums, you are dead wrong. Those are otherworldly terribleness on those.
I put them neck and neck for the worst albums I've ever heard.
Yeah, these bottom 3 Blondies are not as bad as the last 2 Boston albums, but worse than Walk On for sure. My number 9 is No Exit. Like I said in the intro, I really liked the Maria single when it came out. I thought it was really cool, so I bought the CD. I didn't really know much of their older stuff, probably just the hits at that point. And this CD basically guaranteed that I would never become a big Blondie fan. I didn't like it much then. and I don't like it much now. It's a really weird, bad album. I don't understand what's really happening here. It's like they totally fell out of step with the times, and then they came back, and Debbie Harry's like someone's mom being like, what are the kids doing now? And like, oh, you guys are rapping? Let's put Coolio on a song. None of it makes sense. Not only did they put Coolio on a song, but it's got this gothic organ mixed with like these really crunchy guitars, and then he comes in rapping. It's the weirdest song ever. It's really, really strange. Boom Boom in the Zoom Zoom Room. One of these like noir jazzy songs that they started doing around the time of Auto American, but this is the worst of all of them, I think. Not very good. She sounds really bad on it. And the lyrics all over this record are just horrible. You got the song Happy Dog, which is exactly about a happy dog. It's just not good. The production's pretty bad too. It's all around a terrible record.
Well, you're dead wrong. That record is good and interesting, although there are some big duds on there. My number 9 is going to be Panic of Girls. I don't think this is a bad album. I think it's a lousy album. I don't think it's very good. I don't think it's good at all, but I don't think it's really bad or anything. So I'd go like 2 stars. Starts off good. Power pop, kind of synth lead, vibrant, upbeat, like nice, like fast punch to the album with D-Day right off the bat. Big problem here is, whatever kind of, bravado she had and front woman quality, it's gone now. She's just like really droned out, sounds completely like unidentifiable in the mix and just like with her style and her confidence, and they've got like that reggae slow jam in it in the end. And it's just like we've heard it before. Girly Girly's kind of catchy, even though like a lot of the kind of lyrics are really cluttered, and she sounds really nasally on a lot of songs here. Not very good. Like Love Doesn't Frighten Me. I do think there's some things that you can take away on this, like the first 2 tracks, pretty good. I think the drums on this album are actually really good. But Wipe Off My Sweat is one of the worst Blondie songs ever, probably the worst. And like Jason was saying, why are they making these records that have all these distinctive sounds? Like literally track to track, it's a different approach. Like one track, it's a synth pop album, then it's rock, then it's reggae, then it's a club song. It doesn't really work. And I'm a big Blondie fan, but if you just took these albums, in the second half, I would not be a Blondie fan. So I find these more interesting as part of like the whole Blondie story. And there is one, well, I like 2 of these later albums. 2 of the 5 I think are good albums. So, but this one admittedly is not a very good album, but not nearly as bad as you guys are making it out to be. There's stuff that you can grab from the ground here and pull out from the garden and still have some stuff to work with. So I'm going with Panic of Girls here, number 9.
I didn't even talk about Panic of Girls yet.
I know,
so
but I know where you're going with it.
I'm not making it out to be that bad.
No, it's really, really awful. I'm surprised Jason has it. Even, I don't know when it's coming. Hopefully now, because otherwise I don't know what the hell he's thinking. My number 8, I got No Exit at 8. And I think the gap between No Exit and the bottom 3 is pretty wide. At least on this one, I kind of am not cringing the entire album. Maria's a pretty good song. I think No Exit's kind of fun. I didn't hate it aggressively like Jason did. I know it's so kind of like cheesy and corny to have like an older band incorporate like the rap and like the metal guitar and stuff, but it's so kind of over the top that it kind of works for me. And it's either like the worst song ever or the greatest song ever. So I kind of like it. It's not the worst thing in the world. Again, they're just so all over the place with all this stuff, and the lyrics aren't great. The singing isn't great. And the sexuality that Debbie Harry has, like in the first 6 albums, really works for that time period and for the age of the band and what they were doing. She kind of just keeps it going on this, and it's just awkward so often. Like it's like Stifler's mom, kind of like just every time she tries for something like that, I just cringe. And it's just all over these kind of later albums, and it's a big turnoff. But there's just nothing else to like grab onto. It's not like the guitar or the bass or the drums or the lyrics or anything else is great either. So it's just tough, these albums. This one isn't just awful. It's bad, but it's not like mind-numbingly I want to kill myself kind of bad like the other three. So it's definitely the cream of the crop as far as their comeback goes.
You're forgetting an album.
Oh, well, okay. The cream of the crop until they wised up. It's cream of the crop of these weird middle, just completely directionless, horrible, god-awful albums. It's the best one of those.
I think you could argue it's too many directions rather than directionless.
Wow.
Yeah.
That kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, as far as the bottom four that we agree are the bottom four, I disagree. I think the best of those is Panic of Girls. I think it's better than the other ones. They at least seem to have some kind of direction here. It opens up pretty strong, I think. I like D-Day, What I Heard, and Woman a good bit. I think starts out like, oh man, this is going to be a nice a comeback after the horrible last few. But then it like turns suddenly into like this Caribbean pop record where every song from like the fourth track on has this major reggae influence. And I've talked about it in past videos before. That is not my thing. I don't really like it. And I don't think they're very good at it. I don't think it would be my cup of tea, even if they were great at it, but they're just really bad at it. I don't know why they do it so often or who's telling them that it's a good direction for them to go in, but nah, I don't think it's working at all, nor has it ever. Even Tide is High is a pretty lame single. So, started out good, but at least it's like songs that make sense as songs, and there's like real production on it, and you can kind of understand what they're doing. It's not just like this bizarre amalgamation of every type of music they've ever heard. So not terrible.
I agree. Well said, Jason. It's definitely not terrible. So we all seemingly have the same bottom four, slightly rearranged. The difference for me is I'm going to talk about No Exit now at my number 8. And I'm going to talk about it as a good album. It is a 3 out of 5 star album for me. I recommend everybody that watching this video checks it out because it's fascinating. It is like a really cool car wreck with just a lot of weird stuff going on. That said, there are some really bad moments. Like Jason said, No Exit is terrible. I can't believe Joe's saying that it's awful, but is backing up the song No Exit. That is mind-blowing to me. But whatever. She sounds not too good on the song Boom Boom. And yeah, Happy Dog, not great. But I think a lot of the other stuff is cool. Everything But Girl is nice. Double Take. And it's got kind of just like Maria, obviously, and Screaming Skin, lead up track. Not terrible. I don't think the sexuality, is still kind of there for me. Obviously, it's older. She's doing kind of like a gothic witch thing. Like it's got like tarot card reader vibes for me. Like everything's just conjured up as a cauldron, but it's got still kind of like that Blondie, like plastic feel to me, where it's nothing too deep. Not, I think it's good. I got Night Wind Scents, good song. I think it's a good album. Sue me. I don't care. It's a good album. No Exit. Album of the year for 99. God, no, but it's a 3 out of 5 star. It's a good album.
Okay, moving on to number 7. And this album came out a couple years ago, Pollinator. Not terrible. I think I listened to this one actually out of order. So I listened to this one after the classic period because it's on Spotify. And I just skipped past the ones that weren't. I had to go back and listen to them. So when I heard this one, I was like, okay, I see what they're going for. Bunch of guest stars, bunch of guest writers, Johnny Marr, Joan Jett's on here. Not bad. I don't think Debbie Harry really can sing anymore, but I think the production's pretty good. The guest stars all work. It's poppy. It's catchy. It's sing-alongable even. I think the band sounds pretty good. I think the lyrics are still pretty weak, but it's a pretty fun listen. I did not mind this one much at all. So props for figuring it out eventually. There's a lean 20 years there, but I think on this one they at least have sort of a direction and a roadmap of how to put out a decent song and a decent album.
My number 7 is The Hunter. This one, it's just another example of a record where they're just trying to cover way too much stylistic ground. They're really like hopping all over the place. There's not really any continuity to it, and the songwriting just isn't that good. It feels like leftovers from their past couple records. And I believe that I read that this was like a contractual obligation type of record. Chris Stein was not in great shape health-wise. He was had like a mystery illness at the time. So I don't think it was their best effort. Can I find the right words to say? Probably the one standout for me, but even that track's not like classic Blondie, but it's the one track on here that I would maybe go back to at some point.
All right, I'm with Joe. My number 7 is Pollinator. I think this is a good record that got really close to being a really good record or even a great record. It's their comeback album. Joe said that he listened to it thinking it was the follow-up after the breakup, which probably chronologically would have made sense just by the sonic presence that it has, because it really just harkens back to what they're good at. For my personal Blondie taste, it's probably a bit too sharp and glossy that I really want my true Blondie. I like a little bit of the messiness and immaturity of some of the earlier stuff. But this is like, the approach is a nice return to form for just simple raw rock tunes with polish. And they did a smart job of getting back to their wheelhouse, serving their talents a little more. She really is reined in here. I agree that her voice isn't really working too well, but for the most part on this album, it's doing just fine to get along. Sounds really bad in a couple songs like Best Day Ever. It sounds really thick and kind of ugly, unfortunately. And also When I Gave Up on You. This album starts off great with like Joan Jett backed opener with Doom or Destiny. Great guitar leads, really cool punk vibes are back. And then you've got Long Time is really cool, great kind of key solo, Already Naked and fun. Then the middle part for me just falls apart on this album, where it was like getting into like 4-star territory of just a really awesome comeback record. The middle songs are just not very good. Saves itself at the end with the tracks Too Much and Fragments for me. And yeah, it's just kind of a heartbreaking album for me, because really wanted to elevate it and love it as much as I do other Blondie stuff, but it's the cutoff point for me. All of the stuff after the breakup is lumped together. Really wanted it to be on the same footing as the other stuff, but it's just not, because of that middle section of the album. But definitely a step in the right direction. Will they ever do another one? Who knows? Kind of hope not, because I don't trust them to kind of even rematch Pollinator, but it's a good album for sure. And I think Jason's going to surprise people with where he has this, maybe in like top 3 or 4 selection. We'll see. Who knows?
Well, all right then. At least we're kind of on the same page with where we were ranking these things. I don't like it as much as you, but I don't think it's bad. So I'll leave it at that. My number, what are we at here? Number 6 is going to be The Hunter. A little too many tribal rhythms for my taste on this one. Kind of seems like maybe there's a theme, like a weird concept going on here, but maybe not. I think it was just, like Jason said, a contractual obligation. Their attempt at a James Bond song, For Your Eyes Only, it's okay, but it's nowhere near like a James Bond actual song. It's kind of weird, actually, to have it on this album. The rest is, it's fine. Like Orchid Club's all right, and War Child's okay. I think Nigel Harrison, this is the last album he worked on. He was the bass player. He co-wrote a bunch of their hits. So his songs are usually pretty good, pretty poppy, pretty catchy. Rest of the album, it kind of has the classic Blondie sound, so I have it above Pollinator, but just a little bit above Pollinator. It's not an exceptional album. It's definitely the weakest of their classic period. I don't think any of them like it that much. So it's okay, but it's definitely the end of the line. You can kind of see that hit a wall. They were done. So okay, not great.
My number 6 is Pollinator. Not going crazy, putting it in my top 3, but I do think it's easily better than The Hunter, and mostly because of those opening few tracks. Doom or Destiny, Long Time, Already Naked, really, really good. I think those tracks are far better than anything on The Hunter, and those tracks alone really elevate this record for me. I fully agree with Cram. The middle section of the record, the tracks with like Sia, the production just gets too poppy. I think the songs are still good, and if they would have had the same type of production that the first 3 tracks had, it would have been fantastic. By far, since their reunion, the most focused set of songs that they ever had. And it just suffers from having maybe too many cooks in the kitchen as far as, the writers and producers going. That the styles get a little too far off track on some of those songs, but the good stuff is really, really good. And the bad stuff isn't as bad or embarrassing as the bad stuff on the records we talked about already. So I think this is a really good record. If all of the reunion stuff was like this, I mean, they would sit much higher in my mind as a good band.
Yeah, it's a hard album for me to talk about because it starts off just so awesome, like exactly what you're pining for, like you were saying, and then it just kind of falls off. It's tough. All right, my number 6. This one is close to being number 5. I've got Auto American, which I think is a really good album. Everything on up, I'm saying, is really good to great to really great. Really turn over everything to the rhythm section here. It's really theatrical too. It gives off kind of like a musical film score sensation to me, especially right from the intro until like this really, there's really soliloquist moments, styles of vocals on like The Tide is High and old school style, like obviously with like Here's Looking at You. And it also has like, this is the first album where they're really getting expansive with styles and sounds. Some disco, kind of like a little bit of hip hop, obviously, like Rapture. And, it's got a lot of more of their danceable songs at times. There's horns, loops, claps, piano, jazz, sax. Problem I have with this is for the Blondie sweet spot for me, this album's a bit soft for them. It feels kind of like their pop album. Take a lot of the messy grit out of it. A lot of like that late night punk feel. Kind of not on this at all, but I do think the songwriting is really good. I think there's a lot of really cool production choices. I got really no problem with anyone putting this much higher. It's just not quite in my sweet spot, and I think it's a really, really good album. Auto American, number 6 for me.
Auto American is my number 5, and I was pretty confused by this album. Europa is like this menacing Euro weird synth pop, but not synth pop. I don't know. I don't know what they were going for with this album. It's very car focused, which you get from the title. There's the rap in Rapture is all about eating cars and stuff. And there's a song called T-Birds. And there's songs about, being in cars all the time. It's just confusing to me. I don't think it's a very good album. The jazz kind of interludes don't work at all for me. They had a great sound going on E to the Beat. They were right in their wheelhouse with that, with Parallel Lines. And then just this one seems like a complete veering off in this weird direction and lose kind of all like the punkiness, all the grungy dirtiness that they had. And the songs are all right. Like Rapture's pretty cool, the way they integrate rap into it. There's an awesome guitar solo at the end that's kind of like hidden in the back. Tide is High is fun. I just don't get why they chose this direction to go in all of a sudden just a year after Eat to the Beat, which is a completely different record. I barely recognize these two bands, these two albums from the same band. So it's an okay record, but I think it's a total wrong direction for the band and not playing to their strengths at all. Other than the rhythm section is good, like Ramser said. The bass on Rapture is awesome. But I just think that they had a sound. They were really good at that sound. And I don't know why they went off in this direction for this album. So it's an okay album, but not their best.
That surprises me. It's kind of their ABBA album. So
A little bit. It's just I don't want them to be like ABBA. I want them to be like, new wave Pretenders, Elvis Costello, spiky guitars, and so this is an odd choice, I feel.
My number 5 is the debut self-titled Blondie. This is like an update of old like 50s and 60s rock styles, especially like girl groups. I love the band's image. I love the cover photo. Debbie Harry looks great as front woman. I love the jagged kind of punky approach to updating these pop forms. But the songwriting leaves a lot to be desired on this record, I think. I don't think the writing is very good. Debbie Harry, never really a good lyricist, and I think she's extra weak on this record as far as the lyrics go. It's front-loaded. I think the best 3 songs are the first 3 songs, Ex-Offender, Little Girl Lies, and In the Flesh. And then after that, there's really nothing. I think it all still sounds pretty cool, but song-wise, not much there.
I also have Blondie as my number 5, the debut, and I kind of get what Jason is referring to, especially in comparison to some of their better, more professional stuff that's to come, but I think you're underselling the songs as kind of these raw, dirty rock songs. I think they're incredibly memorable in a different way than the other stuff on the other albums. Yeah, like you said, kind of a throwback to 50s, 60s, like sweetheart songs, fun, spunky, perky. And I always kind of like how this kind of trite, materialistic in a way. She's very cocky and obnoxious, but lighthearted at the same time. So I think it's a great debut to establish what they are. She doesn't really sing as much on this album as she will later. She's kind of just like spewing out a lot of attitude. It's got that 60s summer pop, 50s milkshake, sweetheart kind of vibes to it. Really flexing the character of the band on this, which I don't even know if they ever match the character on this. So I think for that, it's a really good album. But yeah, maybe the songwriting will get fleshed out a little more, which will make them great. But this is a great debut, great way to start things off. But I do think there's more than Ex-Offender and Little Girl Lies. There's more songs that I think are really good, like Rip Her to Shreds. I think the album ends kind of cool with Kung Fu Girls and Attack of the Giant Ants. So yeah, this is almost a 4 out of 5 star for me, like almost a great album. I think it's really good. On the premises, just they need a little bit more fine tuning without going too far the other end, which they will do shortly. So my number 5 is Blondie, the debut.
All right, so we're not so far out of sync. I got my number 4, Blondie, and I think it could be a 4-star album, I'll be honest. I don't think the band's very talented at this point, but what they lack in talent, they make up in attitude. I think Harry's a perfect front woman for this. She's not a great lyricist or vocalist, but she's got an awesome attitude. The songs are fun. They're immature, a little dirty, a little sloppy, but I think that adds to the charm and sort of uniqueness of the album, especially in 1976, where there probably wasn't that much that sounded like this. I mean, this is before Pretenders or even Elvis Costello, so it's really kind of in the birth of new wave. I like the jittery guitars. The synth sounds a little too peppy for me. I don't love it, but I really like sort of when they do the throwbacks to like the Supremes and the 50s kind of rock. I think Look Good in Blue is really good. And I just like the attitude. It reminded me sort of the debut of the Pretenders. And I guess, there's some similarities there, but just sort of the brashness, the attitude really kind of covers up what I think they lack as far as talent yet. I think they get better, a lot better as far as musicians, and I think Debbie Harry sounds better on each subsequent album, but I don't think any of those albums are quite as fun and sort of, rambunctious as this one.
All right, my 3 and 4 kind of on the fence. They could flip maybe. Even as I'm sort of saying this, I'm not exactly Sure, they're both kind of mixed bags. My number 3 has probably higher highs but also lower lows. But number 4, I'm going with Eat to the Beat. Great album opener with Dreaming. I love that pounding drum beat and really catchy melody. I like Shayla a lot. I think that's really good ballad. But this record is where the funk and the reggae really start to creep into their sound. As mentioned previously, I think they're very bad at doing both of those. And it kind of, going forward, kind of kills their discography for me, the more and more of that creeps in. So this is, in a way, kind of the beginning of the end for me as far as Blondie goes. Hardest Part, Die Young, Stay Pretty, Atomic. Those are all pretty rough tracks for me. I don't like them very much. And even like some of the punkier songs that do harken back to their earlier sound are just throwaways. They're not very memorable. They just don't have the hooks. Not a bad record. I think there's some good songs on it, but it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't think it's really all that great.
All right. My number 4 is an album I'm not surprised that I've got higher than you guys. It is The Hunter, and it's a difficult album for me to place. I think it's a great album. I'll go 4 out of 5 stars with this. It's so different for them. They drop all of the pop like on this, and it's kind of just like this big, expansive new wave kind of rock album. It's got a really weird underlying kind of sensibility about it. And I think a lot of the songs do kind of stand out as pretty darn good. The playing is, I think, phenomenal on this album. It's really loose and alive. And, they're like the title says, it's got like this animalistic quality to it. Drums are really good. A lot of cool guitar. I think Island of Lost Souls, Orchid Club, Dragonfly, For Your Eyes Only, Beast, English Boys is really cool. Maybe a little bit sluggish in the middle, but I would have been really interested to see where they went after this, had they kept up with new wave in the 80s and stuff. I think it's a great record, actually. And finally, where they're really starting to flex some of their creative minds. Unfortunately, they took like 17 years off after this, and whatever creativity got really just morphed and got weird once they came back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But I think this is a really cool record that sticks out like a sore thumb for them and is a great record. So number 4, I'm going with The Hunter. I know it's kind of really divisive too among Blondie hardcore enthusiasts. Like, some people really like it. Some people are like, thank God they stopped with this. But I think it's great. I'm on that side of the fence.
I'm pretty surprised by that ranking. It's interesting. I'm not going to rag on your decisions for that because you are the resident Blondie fan, but it got really bad reviews, so I was a little hesitant going into it. I kind of knew that people didn't like it as much, but I don't think it's quite as bad as what Jason thought. My number 3, and I think these first 4 albums are all pretty darn good. 3 is going to be Plastic Letters. It's not too far removed from the debut, 2 years later. I think they all got a little bit better at playing. The bass playing, I think the guitar sounds a lot better. They're still kind of doing that pastiche of 50s, 60s style, which I like. Denise is a catchy cover of an old song I didn't know, but I like their version. I think Love at the Pier has this kind of fun, like faux Beach Boys attitude. Sounds pretty good. No Imagination has really cool sounding synths that I liked a lot. It just doesn't have that big single for me. I like the sound, and I like the attitude again. I like what they're going for, but just missing kind of those singles that you'll find on Parallel Lines and Eat to the Beat. So that's my number 3. It's a good album. It's it's a 3.5 to 4 star territory. There's no song over, pretty much every song's under 3 minutes, which is good. It's snappy, punky, gets to the point. Maybe Kidnapper, Detroit 442, and Cautious Lip are a little weird way to end it, but it's a pretty good album nonetheless.
My number 3 is Auto American. I think this is a really interesting record, almost a great record, but it kind of falls a little bit short of that. It's different for them. It's kind of cold and icy. It's got this very like European sound to it. It sounds like maybe it was heavily influenced by Bowie's Berlin records. Opens with Europa, which I think is really cool. Kind of puts you in this like smoky noir mood. And then the next track, you got like a disco song that also has kind of a European vibe to it. And then Here's Looking at You is this sort of their first stab at that sort of jazzy lounge song. And I think those three songs as a trio work in a really interesting way. It sets it up as like a really cool kind of concept record. And man, it could have been so good, I feel like, because I really like all three of those songs. But then Tide is High comes in and just like wrecks the whole thing, basically. And then you got Rapture. Rapture might be my least favorite song that ever became a hit. It is so bad. I hate it. Obviously, I'm not a hip hop fan. I don't talk about hip hop on the channel. It's not my favorite style, but I don't think there's anybody that's ever done it worse than Debbie Harry. It is so cringy to me. I cannot stand it. I think it's so bad. And then the rest of the record's kind of hit or miss. There's some good stuff, some bad stuff. I really like Go Through It. I think that song's awesome. So this had the making of something that could have been really, really cool. But then in the end, I don't know if maybe they weren't confident enough to go all the way with the concept, or if there was pressure to put these pop songs on it or to do the hip hop thing, or if they had too much ambition and it got muddled down somehow. But it just is pulling in too many directions to be truly great. But there's some really cool and interesting stuff on this one.
Seems to be a bit of a theme when we're talking about some of these albums where we feel like they're not quite as good as they should be, which sometimes is a sign that they have lousy producers. So maybe, with some better people behind the wheel of the big semi, could have been a different story for some of these albums and Blondie as a whole. And I agree with you on Auto American with a lot of that review. We're on to number 3 now. My number 3 is going to be Plastic Letters. I think this album is a pretty good step up from the debut. It loses a little bit of the smile and adds kind of like a grimy, mysterious snarl at times. Kind of gawks and walks with more garish strut than the first. A lot of showmanship just through the music and the tunes. And I think because they're losing a little bit of that sweetness, they kind of get their feel that they nail for this album and the next few, where they're just like a great late night band. Seems like they get, kind of images of like getting really dolled up for the night. But then when you get to these albums, they've been through hell and the makeup's kind of all messy. Teenage punk vibes, kind of that pseudo style where they don't want really any of like the trouble that comes with being punk or like any of the attitude. They're just there for the style, kind of materialistic. Debbie Harry kind of gives you this vibe that she can sweet talk her way out of all of the trouble that she gets into. A lot of cheap thrills on this album. They're like a really good immature band, kind of like really good, the best of the immature acts. And I think just a lot of the songs on this just kick ass. And I really actually like Cautious Lip as a closer. Just kind of miss. I love like the drum roll and the slide. Just missed my top 10. But yeah, I think Fan Mail and Denis are an awesome way to start it off. Love at the Piers, really cool, like Joe said. I like Detroit 442, even though it is a little weird, but I kind of like that. Yeah, I think this is a great album. It rocks. 4 out of 5 stars. My number 3 Blondie album, Plastic Letters.
Okay, we're on to my number 2, which is Eat to the Beat, which is a terrible name for an album, and also my least favorite song on the album. The lyrics, this is kind of where Debbie Harry starts to lose me a little bit with some of these lyrics. But other than that song, which maybe it's like a forebear of what I don't like about Blondie, everything else is still kind of in that same vein as Parallel Lines and the debut and Plastic Letters. It's a little more funky. The bass is great. A lot of great parts from Nigel Harrison, who's brought in, I think, on Parallel Lines, but he adds a nice funky bass sound to it. There's a little reggae creeping in here, but I don't think it's quite reggae yet. It's more funk, disco, which I'm fine with. I think Slow Motion is fantastic. Throwback to Motown. They even do the stop, like Stop in the Name of Love. Throw that in there. And that's kind of the sound I like the best. If they're kind of going to go off of their new wave sound, I love when they throw it back to like the 50s, 60s girl groups like the Supremes. More of that, less reggae, and I think they really would have had something. But, Victor's a really just totally weird song. There's a bunch of weird songs on here that, like, I don't even know, is it about like Frankenstein? I think it is. So I don't know. It's just totally kind of out of the blue weirdness, which I like. There's a great bass line as well, which I like. The singles, Dreaming, Union City Blue, and Atomic are all really good. I think this is just a very good album. There's really no bad parts to it. I guess in comparison to Parallel Lines, it wasn't quite on the same level, but what is really? So I think it's a nice progression from there. They'd go in a direction I don't like after this, but I think on this album, they're still right in the sweet spot of Blondie. So it's a good 4-star album for me. Eat to the Beat.
Okay, my number 2 is Plastic Letters. This is a really good album. Really nails down the sound that they're best at. Takes it a step up from the debut. Right out of the gate, Fan Mail is better than anything on their first album. And then from there, you get Denis, which is great. Bermuda Triangle Blues, I think, is awesome. I'm Always Touched by Your Presence is pretty good. I Didn't Have the Nerve to Say No, I think, is also decent. So there's a lot of good songs. It's not a perfect record. I think it's a little front-loaded, but I also think the back half, even though it's not as strong and as memorable, I still think it's pretty streamlined and like tight. Not a lot of fat to be trimmed. Pretty concise songs. So not a perfect record, but the highlights are really good and among their best songs ever.
My number 2, though, the 11th album title, like Joe said, Eat to the Beat. And I agree with Joe, the worst song on the album, but not terrible. So many great songs on this. I'll go 4.5 out of 5. It is near perfect for me. Dreaming, Hardest Part, Union City Blue, really nice power trio to start that off. I think some of the weirder stuff on the back half that Joe was kind of talking about works in a way to kind of slow things down and ease you out of the album, especially on Sound Asleep coming right after Atomic, I think is perfectly placed. And yeah, it's just got a really much more robust sound, which I think is great. The influencers are coming out more straight ahead. They're kind of growing up as a band, and she's singing more in a mid-range. She's really singing more melodically and more with like in a pop realm than she has been, really using a lot of like smooth, wavy, whimsical, seductive romance, especially like on Slow Motion. It just works so well. You even get some female backing vocals that are like really up front. This whole album is like hard hitting, but really pretty at the same time. Kind of like what I was talking about, like that messy teenage style. This is like the adult version that's a few years older, and looking at that version and just being like, you'll get here, kid. It's really awesome. It oozes professionalism and the songs are great. They just have one album that's better, and it seems like we have a trifecta for Blondie.
As we should. I think this is the obvious choice. Really, the only thing it's missing, and I always thought it was on here, I always thought Call Me was on this. It's not. It's on the American Gigolo soundtrack. And that's by far Blondie's best song. And I think one of the problems I always had with Blondie is where are the backup vocals? There's no backup vocals except for on Call Me. It's the only track that they seem to have any backup vocals. It always kind of bugged me. I love that sound on Blondie, the call and response. This is a great album. It's pretty much perfect. There's no bad songs on here, I don't think. I think the cover of The Nerves Hanging on a Telephone is great. Great way to start it out. Great song for Blondie. Right in their wheelhouse. One Way or Another kind of like perfect pop, rock, bratty sound. Picture This is great. Fade Away and Radiate's weird, but it works. It has Robert Fripp on it, so I love it, obviously. 11:59 is great. There's just no bad songs. It's like they just finally got it all together. They got a producer that works. They learn how to play their instruments better. They sound much tighter. Heart of Glass is awesome. Sunday Girl's good. The Buddy Holly cover is good. Picture This is kind of like this proto 80s rocker. So it's like sort of looking backwards and forwards on some of this stuff, which I really like. It's, this came out in 1978. So it really was kind of ahead of its time as far as the sound. I think it has all the right influences, and The band has never sounded better. I think Debbie Harry has never sounded better. And I think this is just their peak. They just had it all together on this one. And I really have nothing negative to say at all, other than I wish it had Call Me on it, because then it would be like a 6 out of 5 stars. But I think it's pretty safe to say this is a 5 out of 5 star.
I would not give it 5 out of 5. It's probably a 4-star for me, but also easily their best. Just a stronger, more consistent, more confident version of Plastic Letters. Just really good. I agree. Their cover of The Nerves is fantastic. I also love the Nerves version. I just think it's a great song. I think anybody could cover that song and it would be awesome. One Way or Another is iconic. I love Picture This, Pretty Baby, Sunday Girl, all great songs. Heart of Glass is just a perfect pop song. Absolutely love it. It's just a really great pop record with loud guitars, big hooks, danceable beats, got everything. Easy number 1, Parallel Lines.
I don't give out 5 stars lightly, so I'm only going 4.5 out of 5, which means I think it's very great. It's not quite a masterpiece because Joe called it. It is missing like one more just undeniably unforgettable song, which would have been Call Me, and it probably would have pushed it over. Don't have too much more to add. I think that 11:59 is awesome because it's like really headbanging at first, but then kind of lightens up. Heart of Glass, awesome. I think Fade Away and Radiate is really cool because it kind of brings in like this 50s sci-fi geekiness to it a little bit almost, which is really cool. Pretty Baby is awesome. I think there's a really cool like on I Know But I Don't Know, like cool like guitar double synth kind of lead. So like there's some heaviness on this album almost that they don't really have on some other stuff. And I would say overall, one thing that doesn't get enough credit for Blondie is some of the drumming. You can kind of find it on most of the albums. Really good. I think there's some really good drumming on this. Yeah, you guys nailed it. This is, although I think Eat to the Beat is closer to this than people realize. I don't think this is the far away front runner as their best album. I think Eat to the Beat is close to it, to be honest. This is Parallel Lines, my favorite, a trifecta, yay. Yeah, the consensus favorite best Blondie album for show.
Well, I may have alluded that I really hated this band in all of our messages, but really I was just listening to those terrible albums, and I needed to vent about it because they were so bad. But the difference between those albums and the good albums are so great that I just wish they didn't get back together. They should never have reformed. They should have never tried it again. Their legacy was secure, and it should have just been solo Debbie Harry or something. She can do whatever she wants. So I like Blondie. I obviously like the first 4 albums plenty, but their legacy gets dragged down so much for me by that later stuff, which I didn't even know existed. So really doing this discography has destroyed my image of Blondie completely. And I think they're pretty mixed bag, but when they were good, they were great. So
I don't think I really like Blondie that much. I think they have moments that are really, really great. I could make a top 20 Blondie playlist, and that would be all I need. Great moments, but not enough of them to really make them a great band in my mind. Most of the great moments are on Parallel Lines. Then you've got a few more scattered throughout some of the early albums. And then they put out some of the worst albums of all time as well. So if they could have done more of what they were good at, they could have been great. But I don't know. They strayed too far from that path for me, and I just really didn't like much of the other stuff that they tried.
I like Blondie the most. Probably a candidate for the top 100 for my favorite all-time artists on the strength of that first run. Obviously, if you're at this point in the video, our enthusiasm just grows and grows and grows throughout. It's probably a very depressing video at the beginning, especially with these two knuckleheads over here, but yeah, I think, for one of my favorite kind of eras and genres, that late 70s, like, new wave punk kind of vibe, with those bands that we've been talking about throughout this video. They make it right in kind of the sweet spot of stuff I really like. But kind of a weird thing for me is I don't really consider them a songs band, which I think a lot of people would think. To me, it's an albums band. You know, I don't think they have really any of my all-time favorite songs, but for album listens, I think it's great. A great state of mind to be in. Great rock, punky rock albums. Obviously, the big takeaway, the big difference with us, with our lists, because we were kind of in the same wheelhouse throughout, is just my enthusiasm for how much I love the top stuff and how I don't think the bottom stuff is nearly as bad as you guys do. So that's my takeaway.
And yet you didn't even have 5 stars for Parallel Lines. I don't get these ratings.
I don't get your star ratings, but that's a different conversation altogether.
I'm an albums guy, but I'm not married to the band, I guess. They're not a top 100 band for me by any means. But I think I just recognize the greatness of their great stuff. As a whole, it's weird. It's just dragged down by too many stuff that I just don't like.
All right, everybody, let us know how you like Blondie, how you rank their albums. Are they a great band? Are they a band that had great moments? Are they mediocre? Let us know. Hit the like on the video, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check down in the description for links to all of our social media accounts. We've got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Check us out there. And we will see you in the next video for our top 10 favorite Blondie songs.